So I'd like to welcome everyone today to CYP Now's debate on youth work to coincide with our special report on youth work, which will be available in the November edition of the magazine. I'm Fiona Simpson, I'm the online editor at Children and Young People Now, and I'd like to introduce our panel today. Anne Longfield, Chair of the Commission on Young Lives, Abby McClatchy, Director of Youth Work at the National Youth Agency, and Jamie Mazraf, Chief Executive on Onside. Today's discussion will be talking about how do we improve access to youth work. As a bit of background to this topic, there's been a huge cut in government funding and local authority spending on youth services over the past decade. This has come at a time when children's mental health needs and safeguarding risks linked to gangs and exploitation have risen. The pandemic has compounded these issues, and evidence is emerging that disadvantaged groups of young people are most at risk of disengagement with education, getting involved in youth violence, and becoming long-term NEET. Policymakers have recognised this in recent years, and a range of initiatives and funding programmes have been created that put youth work at the forefront of tackling these issues. However, statutory provision remains threadbare in many areas, and there is a strong case for new ideas and solutions to develop new provision so more young people can access youth work support. The first question I'd like to put to the panel today is, are schools the right place to base youth work hubs around, and what advantages do they have over other community settings? Anne, we'll go to you first.
Brilliant. Well, really pleased to be part of this discussion, and you probably don't mean to say that youth hubs around schools are something that we're really keen on and proposing. And I guess there's three basic reasons for that, and they are quite, basic. The first is that schools are universal. So when you've got a universal service, you're most likely to be able to identify children early, young people early that need help, and intervene as early as you can to help provide the help. So, with a universal service, you've got that open front door that allows you to do that, and it's not got the stigma if you're actually running services. The second is that they're everywhere. They are consistently across the country. They were built for children. I know they were built for children's education, but they were still built for children. And essentially, they're public buildings. We do own them and pay for them. And then the third one being that actually parents know about them, have a level of trust, understand that there's different kind of experiences of it, and other services know what it means to be in touch with the school and to coordinate. So there's a potential to coordinate around the school. That isn't to say that schools should be the only place where obviously interaction with youth workers should take place. I think that when you've got a hub, then part of that responsibility of a hub will be to work with other youth settings in the community. I'd also say that actually the school needs to transform what it's about. We've had a move towards schools being community anchors. That needs to extend. And we need to make sure that if we are using school premises for time outside school, and I'd love all schools to stay open outside most of the time when formal lessons aren't going on, that we need to make it a place which is about kids, it's about their leisure time, it's got people in it who are not teachers, they're youth workers, they're coaches, and make it feel completely different. But on the straight, how would you improve access? Then actually, if we're going to build out from schools, we've also got really positive benefits for children to be able to work with youth workers to increase and improve their experience whilst they're in schools and they're learning as well. So it's a practical response, but it's one that I think has got immense potential.
Brilliant, thank you. And Abby, I'd like to bring you in on that. What are your views?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because I think the points that Anne made were all really, really valid. Most communities have a school building, therefore it makes sense for it to be a community-based asset that's accessible. And look, we reported on the benefits of youth working alongside schools in our Better Together report, but I think we have to be careful to not take this down to its most basic. So it's not as simple as saying that it's a physical location for youth work should be within schools. We all know that there's thousands and thousands of young people who haven't returned to school, for whom school, it doesn't feel like a safe place or the right place for them. And I think the point that Anne made is a really important one for us to hold on to, which is how do we connect schools more broadly to the wider community and to other organisations to provide a really holistic offer for young people that might not necessarily be well engaged in school. So it's about schools might be a good place to deliver some youth work, and absolutely they should be a part of that ecosystem, but actually it's about through, beyond and around the school day and communities, and recognising the value that youth work has to support formal education, but also independently for the needs of all young people, really.
That's great. And I'd like to ask you, how do you engage those young people that you mentioned, Abby, that haven't returned to school after the pandemic in youth work? Is there more we can be doing around that?
Yeah, and there's some really, really fantastic examples actually of organisations that are doing brilliant work connected to schools, but very much community based. So Oasis, as an example and as a model, have got some really, really brilliant provisions and services where they're engaging with young people around schools. So they have a fantastic hub, actually. Apologies, that's my dog sneezing in the background. They have a brilliant hub that runs next to a school, and so for young people who perhaps aren't comfortable and confident being within the school environment, they still have access to those trusted professionals that are connected to a school, who are able to work with them to support their integration into or alongside schools. Now that could be out on the street, so funding solid detached youth work teams of trained professionals that can work in partnership. There's lots of really good examples of this happening in and with schools all over the country. The key for me is how we amplify that, support it and fund it adequately so that it does create that equitable access for all young people.
That's brilliant. And Jamie, I'd like to bring you in on that. How does Onside work alongside schools, if at all, to engage young people who might be missing from education?
It's a really good question. It's a good debate. So Onside, we're a network of 14 state-of-the-art youth clubs around the country that reaches 55,000 young people every year, and about half of those members come from the 20% most deprived parts of the country. And what we see across our youth zones is that, you know, speaking to Abby's point, there are a lot of young people who are disengaged with formal education, sadly, and that's obviously got significantly worse since the pandemic. And what I think youth zones are really good at are, and youth centres and youth workers generally, are about building young people's confidence back up so that they're able to engage in a school setting, which might have become very difficult for them, often for mental well-being being a key reason to that. So take Anna. So one of our young members from our youth zone in Croydon. So Anna had been to 6 different secondary schools and before the age of 15. So she was really struggling to engage in any formal school setting. She had challenges at home that was affecting her mental well-being. But through the amazing kind of magic of youth workers who just have this ability to connect to young people on their level, and really through Rose, her youth worker, Anna was able to work out, yes, actually, I want to become a mental health youth worker. And to do that, I need to do well in certain courses at school. And that really encouraged her, through the confidence she gained, to re-engage in school. And I do think that's what we want to see more of, is the youth work sector, which, informal education, its own profession, aligning much more closely with the formal education sector, because together they can provide a really strong holistic support that young people need, particularly those that are struggling to engage in school.
That's great, thank you. And I'd like to move on to the next question now, which Abby, I'll go to you first for this one. Will the new statutory guidance for youth work services and development of the youth guarantee encourage local authorities to invest more in provision at a time when we've seen big cuts?
Yeah, investment's a key word in that, really, isn't it, Fiona? Look, I guess what it brings to us is a slightly different perspective on that. I think local authorities have now got a much clearer statutory duty and a model to deliver really good youth offer for young people. But we don't expect them to suddenly magic up a new youth service. There isn't unlimited pots of money, and I think it's going to be more about how local authorities can work creatively through commissioning, through solid partnerships with voluntary community and faith sector, with allied sector partners like schools, in order to really understand and map and support the broadest range of community need through creative partnerships. So we would love there to be really significant sustained new investment. You know, you'll have seen recently the youth sector roadmap that was came from the National Youth Sector Advisory Board, and one of the key parts of that is about investment. But I think whilst we're waiting for that sustained investment, it's partnerships, creativity and collaboration and commissioning are going to be key to delivering more youth work for more young people.
Thank you. Would you be able to give us a bit more of an idea about what's in that roadmap? I know the NYA was involved in creating it.
Yeah, I mean, well, involved in creating it, we're one of the partners that are involved in it. So 20 youth sector organisations have come together in order to shape a roadmap that talks about, you know, what we all collaboratively believe are really important, significant things that need to be in place for a solid, comprehensive youth offer for young people. So it talks about workforce, and I think Jamie actually alluded to that with his example from one of his young people. What does it mean to be a professional youth worker? How can we equip people and skill people to be able to do that work well for young people across a variety of environments, including schools? It talks about funding, it talks about sustained offer, and really, really importantly, it talks about the need for young people to be involved in shaping and building and determining what their needs are and what that youth offer should look like.
That's great, thank you. And we saw last week there was some investment announced by government around the training of, I think it was 500 extra youth workers. Is that enough for what we need to really boost access to the youth sector?
Yeah, no, it's not enough, but it's a start. And again, I think it comes back to that point about creativity and collaboration. So that we have a model for a vision for the workforce, which includes 10,000 professionally qualified youth workers, new as a minimum, 20,000 skilled level 2 and level 3 workers, and a minimum of 40,000 skilled and trained volunteers. And I think it's about how we work together to deliver that. So funding from the government for bursaries is a really welcome investment to help upskill people that are already there, but there's also other ways and other things that we can do. So how can we work collaboratively to access the underspending apprenticeship levy to fund places to train people up to be youth workers? Also, how can we share our resources in order to build training networks in communities and in regions and areas where we can share and shape and collaborate? I know OnSide have got quite an interesting model about how they train their youth workers. So again, it's about how we do that collaboratively together. But look, we're never going to say no to more investment. Young people are so important, and part of valuing young people is valuing the training that we give to the professionals that work alongside them in that really important life stage.
That's great, thank you. And Jamie, are you able to give some examples of how you do train your staff at OnSide?
Just echo Abby's point around the sad shortage we have of trained youth workers now in the sector that has really kind of hit home the last 10 years in particular. I think it's 4,500 youth workers that have left the sector. So that leaves, I think, all youth organizations in this challenging point of trying to recruit paid and volunteer youth workers who are, as I said, those have that magic ability to connect with young people. So what we've done as a network is we've kind of recognized as a group of charities across the country that this is a kind of a national problem. And by being part of the OnSide network, we've been able to invest in a youth work training program, which takes, it can often be young people who may have had their own youth worker and have really been, they've become passionate about youth work itself and they want to get into youth work. We provide them a pathway right the way through up to train to senior leader roles within youth zones. We're able to do that by being a collection of charities. But I think for individual youth charities, that's really hard right now. And that's why, as Abby said, we need that, both the investment from government sustained, but also you know, that's got to be the start of more funding for bursaries in the future.
Brilliant. Anne, is there anything you'd like to add on those topics?
Well, I think the thing is that you know, there's been such a stripping back of services and support for young people over the last decade plus, and we've all seen the figures, 70% less. And I mean, the optimistic part of me says that more people are seeing the benefit of youth workers. You know, many children won't get back into school unless they have someone who's standing alongside them, you know, the magicians that are able to get them back into school. Those that are working with young people in schools say they've got a 95% success rate if a child's at risk of being excluded. Work with a youth worker, most of them can stay in school. So I think that in a way, more and more professionals who have got problems to solve, if you like, are seeing that youth workers have lots of those answers. Having said all of that, you know, we've got an absolute epidemic of youth violence at the moment. We've got whole areas where there aren't safe places to go outside school. So nothing short of a really ambitious, bold rebuilding programme to really embed youth work in every community is really going to be responded to what I think the scale of need is.
That's great, thank you. You talk about this sort of youth violence epidemic, and you know, research has shown that it's those after school hours where children are at most at risk of being targeted. Is that where the efforts should be targeted to start that provision going again?
Well, certainly the direct hours after school are where the police always say the greatest risks are. But we also know, of course, evenings, weekends, school holidays and the like, which kind of takes me back to the point that we do have schools where the vast majority of time of those times where the risks are high, the schools are closed. So I think we should be much more creative about how we use buildings that have so many precious resources. So I think that, yes, we need to build out from the time in school, but we need to look at that kind of provision that can become an expectation. Ultimately, this is about ensuring that we build young people's out of school time into their local communities, not that they're a bit of an add-on, not that they're just something that happens a few hours a week round the corner where no one can see it, but actually we build young people into the way that, you know, our communities operate, and that will change our communities and change them for the better, I think. And if you ask most people, whatever their age, what would be of real benefit to a community, they will often say more safe places and more things to do for young people, because they know what deficit we have at the moment. So yeah, I'd make those real priorities.
That's great, thank you. And linked into that, actually, the last question today: are youth settings that offer a range of services and high quality facilities the best way of attracting young people, even if there is a small charge for it? Jamie, I'll go to you first on that.
Thanks. And it's a really good question. I would slightly challenge the word best, because I think best is always, you know, what we want is we want choice for young people, as Anne said, that's built into the communities and isn't an afterthought, which sadly so many of what we provide to young people seems to be at the moment. And for some young people, accessing that in their schools after school hours will be absolutely brilliant. For many, it will be, you know, much more closer to them, closer to home, outside, you know, on streets. There's lots of different types of youth work, and what we want to have is that blend that's available for young people. I mean, our experience is particularly around centres that are youth clubs, the way that young people would dream of them, you know, if they got the chance, where there is this amazing array of activities that you can do inside our youth zones that range from recording music through to going climbing, through to learning how to cook, dance and media. So a whole range of activities that young people can access through youth zones. And our experience is that this works really well for a number of reasons. I think one is that for many young people that we see, they don't know that they're into music when they first come into a youth centre. They don't know that they're really interested in art, and often they've been kind of put off these, sadly, in formal education. but it's by going to a space that has all these different activities. They're really accessible for them, that they discover their passion in something. They probably only came because their friends came and it was a safe, warm space, but they end up getting into something they couldn't dream of. So like just last night, I was speaking to Owen, one of our young members from Wigan, who went in to play football with his friends, discovered this amazing passion for music through the support of his youth workers, and went on to go for Guildford art school, became a singer on the West End. You know, that never would have happened if he couldn't go into a space that that had all that on offer. And the second reason I think that why it's good to have that multi-activity centre is just that you can appeal to a whole range of young people from lots of different interests, demographics, because there's so much going on. And then they get to rub shoulders with each other, and that peer learning and impact is so unique, I think, which is increasingly harder and harder to find. And the last reason I'm a firm advocate in the centres where everything, that kind of bigger platform, is just it allows partners also to come in and use spaces that are there really focused on young people to deliver alongside us. So our youth centres always have multiple partners who work with young people in the area, be it from mental health specialist or sports or music, lots of different specialisms. And by having that dedicated facility there for young people, that allows that youth facility to become an anchor for all partners inside an area.
Brilliant, thank you. And going back to what you were saying, is there potential to use schools and the facilities they have to mirror what's going on at places like Onside, or do they need to be these specialist facilities?
Well, you certainly could have a version of Onside. I mean, I agree with Jamie, you know, inspirational places for kids to go is fantastic. And, you know, who wouldn't want one of those in their community? But, you know, schools are impressive buildings. I've been to plenty of schools that have, you know, proper dance floors, that have music rooms, that have fantastic sports facilities, as well as everything else you'd know within a school. And I just think part of our investment in young people has to be about investing in them for their time, yes, in the classroom, but also their wider interests too. So I've always advocated that, you know, we really do need to get hold of the keys for more schools. And of course, there are lots of things around, you know, the building has to be kept to the standard it is, and all of the rest of it, and actually investment would be needed. But wouldn't it be fantastic if we could redefine parts of the school at least into great inspirational places where young people can go? But I would say the other side of that, of course, what's really important is those relationships with the people within it. And it's the relationships, whether we're in the school or whether they're, you know, in the local park or wherever that intervention or that activity is taking place, that is the thing which will really connect and make the difference. But yeah, I mean, I've been advocating for kind of a sure start approach for teenagers, you know, in every area, wrapped around schools, youth workers, family support workers, and reaching out and connecting other services and youth activities in the community. For me, that would be the kind of infrastructure that would really transform our communities for young people.
Thank you. Abby, I'd just like to bring you in on that. Have you got any views on either what Jamie or Anna have said?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing for me is you know, I've been a youth worker for 25 years, right? I've met quite a lot of young people, even though I'm probably not one now. And one of the things that we hear from young people is about having a sense of ownership and belonging of the spaces that they choose to occupy, choose being a really, really key phrase in that. And so I guess I see both sides of the coin, because I recognise that purpose-built specialist buildings that are specifically for young people, designed by and with young people, that are shaped and influenced by everything that young people want and need, really shows a value for young people and really shows them that they are a key fact in all of our considerations about community and belonging. However, I don't disagree with what Anne said. Schools are community buildings, they're assets. They're supposed to be shaped by the wants, needs and desires of young people. And I think where it's done well, it's brilliant. You know, my only experience as a young person with a youth club was actually in a school. It was youth workers that were employed by the local authority that used a space within the school. The difference being it was incredibly well maintained. It was completely owned and shaped and designed by the young people. Everything that was in there, everything that was up on the walls, the colour of the seats, every single little part of it was what the young people that accessed it wanted. However, for me, the primary thing is the relationship, and I think that transcends any building. I think a skilled, well-equipped, well-trained practitioner can build a relationship with young people and do the most transformational youth work you will ever see anywhere. And we demonstrated that during the pandemic, didn't we? Well, everything was closed, and yet youth workers, rain and shine, morning, noon and night, were out on the streets, in parks, under bridges, wherever young people were, just being there for young people and creating the space to support young people in whatever it is that they want to do, to help young people to access brilliant buildings, to help young people to access education or whatever it might be. For me, the thing is not about where it happens, it's about who it happens with and the skills of the practitioner. And so, you know, I don't have a particular view either way, but what I would say is your original question was about, should we be encouraging young people to pay for, or is that the best provision? And I guess my watch point around that is access to youth work shouldn't be dependent on socioeconomic status. And so we just need to be really mindful that however we do it and wherever we do it, it should be about a level playing field, and it should be about equity of access, whether you live in a rural, a coastal, a city community, on a school doorstep or right next to an amazing on-site youth zone. All young people should have the same access to youth work and the same professionals, and that's what really matters.
Thanks, Abby. And just finally, any final thoughts from you there, Jamie?
I think I completely agree. And I think we shouldn't be kind of trying to trade off the either or of should it be in schools or should it be in centres.
We want them all.
We want it all. Full stop. Young people need more safe spaces where they can access positive activities and trusted adult role models. Full stop. And it is, as Abby said, it's the relationship that has the development impact. That's the amazing skills that those youth workers have. So it should be more. I mean, just in terms of the pay point, obviously we do charge, like within youth zones, we charge 50p. That's the entrance that young people pay to get into a youth zone, and that allows them to access everything within it. The reason we do that as a principle, we want young people to feel that it's their space. It's not a hand-me-out. They're not recipients. They're members of their youth centre, and they expect a certain quality because of that. But we also make sure that that's never a barrier for entry, and I think that's the key point Abby's making. Like money, an entrance fee cannot stop those who need it the most from getting in. So I entirely agree with that.
Thank you. That's all of my questions, but thank you very much for joining me today. That's been a wonderful debate.